a real treat. So I'm going to say, let's get started. So Gemma's going to introduce herself and she's going to sort of set the framework for how it's going to work today. So I'm just going to kick back and let you enjoy, and we'll catch up again towards the end. So over to you, Gemma.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. This is very close to my heart. So this is more of a passion project. And when Becky said, will you do this for me? The answer is always going to be absolutely yes, because every part of what we're about to talk about is so close to everything that I believe in and everything that I've been working towards. And part of when I was thinking about moving forward with the coaching side, I realized that I've been coaching for a really long time, maybe my whole life in some aspects, because I think that that's what coaching is. It's about learning, and then it's about imparting that little bit of information that you learn at every bit of the journey. So to let you know who I am Gemma and I am the breakup coach. When I talk about being a breakup coach, that doesn't necessarily mean I only talk to people who are in the midst of a breakup. It actually means more about the relational part of a breakup, which is sometimes shedding the old self. It's the parts of you that no longer serve you as well. So it can actually be within a relationship, and it can also be to do with family members, and it can do with your career as well, because there are always going to be points within our journey that we need to break up from. And that's really what I specialize in. So tonight is really about talking about that sort of thing. It's about going into the depths of what that means, how to be in a healthy relationship, and also how to find yourself within a relationship. But also, if the choice is to move forward, then obviously we all need tools in order to do that. So my premise is always heal, grow, and thrive. So we heal first, then we grow, and we ultimately thrive. So the importance of personal growth for successful relationships for me is the most important part. It's not necessarily about analyzing a relationship and saying what works and what doesn't. It's actually about doing the soul work yourself. It's looking at yourself, how you can change, how you can work on your own self-confidence and your self-belief and self-esteem, and then move forward and bring that into your relationship. So it enhances good mental and emotional, spiritual state positively within that relationship. And it's a contribution to the mutual growth as well. So for me, what we're going to talk about predominantly is actually the point of self-growth within a relationship, not just fixing what might be broken. When we don't heal and when we don't work on those toxic beliefs, particularly, you actually bring that within your relationship, and that can create insecurity, resentment, and a lot of misunderstandings. Sometimes actually about yourself. You get so lost within these relationships. Again, they don't necessarily have to be relational in a romantic point of view, but actually in a whole concept, that we can lead to very destructive communication patterns. And what we want to do is get you to know yourself on such a level and do that work that allows you to really understand who you are to be able to move forward. And part of that is understanding your belief system. Now, there might be a lot of information within this webinar that you say to yourself, do you know what? I've been over this. I've done it time and time and time again, heard it, done it, bought the t-shirt. But you know, the thing about these sorts of bits of information is it's like a spring back effect. There's always going to be something that you can take home, and it might even affect you a lot later on. But for right now, I want you just to be absorbent in this information, even if you already know it or you've covered it before, because actually you might find that something within it that becomes really helpful later on. So when we look at beliefs, we look at our own belief system. There are things that we hold within ourselves. They're drivers. They're parts of us that actually become the thing that makes our decisions. It helps us to go into those relationships, choose the people. But fundamentally, what's most important when we start understanding beliefs, especially within a relationship, is the fact that every belief has to be referenced. So we're going to spend an awful lot of time within our life looking at these relationships, looking at these beliefs and going, do you know what? Does this work for me anymore? Does it not? Is it how I want to be? Is this how I want to perceive myself? And that is where I ask you to challenge those beliefs. Beliefs can come out conversationally. It might be, oh, do you know what? Nothing good ever happens to me in a relationship. I don't feel safe ever in a relationship. And when you start actually listening to the way the words come out, you can actually see quite frequently what our belief system is. when you start recognizing those belief systems within yourself, it's actually then really easy to start picking them up on other people. And you go, oh, that's their belief system, or that's something that I believe as well. So when we look at beliefs, what we really need to look at as well is that when we have a belief system that's really strong, we actually fall back on it at our highest point of crisis and stress. So when we actually start to do a dissection of our beliefs, it's really, really important that we actually hold on to the ones that become the points of reference when we are actually in a state of stress. So in those challenging times, what we're going to do is we're going to fall back on our highest level of preparation. These might be beliefs, values, and also habits as well. And so we need to do that deep dive to understand what our beliefs actually are. And that is when we start to curate a really positive relationship, not only with yourself, but with the people around you. When we start to look at those beliefs, we then start to look at potentially a change mechanism. So we say, okay, I don't want to anymore believe that I am no longer worthy. We know that all beliefs draw down to two things: I am not worthy and I am not enough. And we need to look at those two aspects of dispowering beliefs and say, what within this can we change? Once we make a decision to make a change within those beliefs, we have to give ourselves time. We certainly don't do enough of that in our lives, and giving ourselves time to look at it, dissect it, and then equate for the change. Once we've done that, we can create action, then we create outcome, and then we level up. And this is cyclical. So this is going to happen time and time and time again. So I want you to view this as a lifelong journey. This isn't about taking on a conceptual idea right now and going, oh, it didn't work for me. I tried it for a week and it didn't work. It's actually more about having a look at these beliefs, making adjustments to the way that we perceive the world or ourselves or the elements that are in our circle, and then allowing for that change. One thing I want you to do this evening is I'd like you to write down a goal for yourself. What is something you truly long to have within your life? What does that look like for you? It can be within a relationship, or it can actually be within a friendship, or it could be within the relationship with yourself. What is something you truly long to have? Write this down and then look at it as being lofty, as if you cannot reach it. There might be a limiting belief there to say, oh, this isn't possible for me. It might be, I want to earn £1 million in the next 5 years, or it just might simply be, I want my partner to listen to me and I want our communication to be better. So write that goal down for yourself right now and then hold on to it. And I want this to be something that you use as an anchor to work towards, because when we look at what goal we're aiming towards and then we look at the belief system that we're holding, you might find that there's quite a big discord between the two things, and that's why you're struggling to get there. When we look at these things, I also want you to actually add in this as well for a little bit later on. I'm giving you a couple of tasks this evening. I want you to spend 10 minutes this evening as well, and I want you to write a breakup letter to yourself. And this is to your old self. This is a part of you that you want to move away from. So let's look at it in a sense that you're going to sit down and it's going to be, dear me, if it's for me, it'll be, dear Gemma. I thank you for all of the things that you've done for me, but these are the bits that I want to start letting go of. And you'll start to find that actually the writing becomes quite cathartic. There's no judgment here. I want you to use your hand and the pen, and I want you just to make it happen. And then I want you to observe what happens to you afterwards. So this is quite a useful tool when you're going through anything, whether it's a breakup or a relationship, or maybe there's something that's causing discord within your life. And take 10 minutes this evening to do that and see what comes up. And please do let me know. I'm sure we're going to have a chat or some sort of email going on. And please do let me know. If you want to share the letters with me, that would be great. If you don't, that's fine as well. But I do implore you to make this change this evening. When we talk about when we start to then dissect and have a really good detail about how we're going to move forward, one of the tools that I use time and time again is something called the gratitude effect. And this is about embracing the things that you are most grateful for. Now, we're going to relate this to your relationship, because actually we get sometimes very stuck in what is the negative aspect of the relationship. Our minds can sometimes get really, really drilled down into something that might be quite negative. And then we forget actually some of the positives that happen within our lives. And with the gratitude effect, it makes you start to see things maybe from a slightly different perspective. It opens up the landscape for you. So you can write a list and you can write down your gratitudes, and you can then start to really have a look at that ripple effect of how it's going to affect your relationship. You know, sometimes with my partner, Simon, I can get in a situation where I get so hung up on his behavior that I actually forget all the good micro behaviors that he does for me. And I do this in order to remind myself. And that, again, it creates an anchor for change. We also have something, again, you might already be familiar with this, Ho'oponopono. Now, Ho'oponopono it's a prayer and it's a Hawaiian prayer that I have used throughout my journey. So these are tools that I wanted to hand over to you tonight. Now, it means making things right. It's a karmic prayer. And what it does is you repeat this time and time again. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. Now, when there might be irritations or conflicts or something that's happening within you that maybe we can't articulate, maybe we can't find a way to exert from what's going on inside of ourselves passionately, what this can do is just kind of put it in a little bit of a bubble for you. And it actually creates a massive release. I've had to let go. I'm divorced, and I had to let go of a lot of pain and this is one of the reasons this course is so close to me. I had to forgive an awful lot. Things which necessarily I wouldn't naturally forgive. And I use this prayer in order to be able to free myself of what the things that I was holding on to, the bits that got stuck. We use Reiki a lot for this as well. I know within our world that this is really important, but this is something that we can actively use in moments as well when you really do feel quite distressed. And mine is always in the shower of a morning. I sit there, I have something that comes up in my mind that grips me and makes me feel and takes me back to the moment. I say to myself, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I thank you, and I love you. And you're saying, I'm sorry for my part in it. Please forgive me for anything that I might have done. Thank you for the lesson that this has taught me. And love being the most powerful energy that we have, we then start putting that out there. Again, have a look at this. There's lots of information out there on Ho'oponopono, and it's really, really powerful. So forgiveness within a relationship, it's not actually about accepting bad behavior. Of course it's not. There are some things that are unforgivable, and there are some scars that we just can't shake off. But it is about freeing yourself from the emotional burden and the resentment and pain that might have come along with it. Forgiveness is for you, it's not for them, but it is incredibly liberating and empowering. And if you find it difficult to create that forgiveness, especially if you're in a relationship and time again, these things are coming up and it's incredibly difficult to forgive, you can actually just forgive your part within it, and that can create a massive freedom straight away. And again, a little bit of perspective and a little bit of landscape makes a big difference. To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that that prisoner was you. Of course it is. You know, when we hold on to resentment and distrust and difficulty, a lot of the time we are only putting ourselves in a prison. Forgiving others, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. All roads we want to lead back to peace. Always. That's the point. We want to live our best life, and we want to sit in a situation where we give ourselves permission as well to live in a place that is authentic, happy, and certainly peaceful. And sometimes that curates a bit of forgiveness. But that doesn't mean that if we create forgiveness, that we're not going to be assertive within our relationship. We are not going to roll over. We are not doormats. We are not here to people please. We are also here to be heard and hold a space for ourselves that is incredibly powerful. So never be bullied into silence. Never allow yourself to be made a victim. Accept no one's definition of your life, but the definition you put on it yourself. And this is where we go back to the beginning of what I was talking about. When we create our versions of ourselves, when we live in our truth and we live consciously, we start to create a version of ourselves that feels so strong and so empowered that you can lift up. And then you actually end up starting lifting up the people around you. And assertiveness can be a massive self-esteem booster. It reduces anxiety because you're actually speaking the words that you need to speak in a really clear, communicative way. It can create conflict resolution within a relationship. But when we think about assertiveness, we always want to understand the concept that we're creating a win-win resolution. If you go into an assertive approach trying to squash the other person because of the pain that you're holding on to yourself, fundamentally, you will never be able to create that win-win situation. And when one of you wins in a relationship, that means one of you loses. And if one of you loses, that is never going to be let go of from the other person. It's a long time, but unless they do the work, it's going to be a long time before they release that. So you always want to be looking at a win-win resolution. And sometimes that looks like, when we look, I kind of curated an idea here of what that might look like within a relationship. So one of you is taking the car to work and it's frustrating the other one because you're consistently late. So the non-assertive approach would be you continue to accept their behavior and remain quiet, even though it's affecting your job performance. Obviously, that's incredibly passive. And we then start to get into a situation where we build up resentment ourselves. And I think all of us can we can believe in our relationship that there are parts that compromise just steps over a little bit too far. An aggressive approach can be you explode in frustration, saying you're always making us late with your irresponsibility. You need to get your act together. Well, when you start pointing fingers and when you start saying you stop taking responsibility for that moment and we stop living consciously. And then we've got the assertive approach where you calmly express your concern. I've noticed that we've been arriving late to work recently and it's impacting my performance. Can we discuss a solution to ensure we both get to work on time? Now, this is just an example because I wanted to make it as broad and general as possible. But when we look at this, we can understand that with a win-win approach, we need to sit down. But the only way we can do that is when we know each other and when we know ourselves so very well. Then we go on to the observation. I have to be honest, this is one of my favorite parts when I talk about self-growth is observation. Observation has the power to awaken our self-awareness. When we start to believe in ourselves and we start to notice our behavior, we can then start to decide what we accept and what we don't. A lot of the time when we hear the chatter in our mind and we listen to it profoundly, we actually lose our sense of self because we're actually not observing the chatter. We're just abiding by it. And when we start to make observations of the conversation that's happening in our heads, we can actually suffer less. Because you can choose to ignore it. It is actually a choice that we have. And you can become the observer. And when we talk about the higher self and when we talk about reparenting ourselves, that is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about listening, making change where necessary. So when we turn our gaze inward and become observers of our own behavior, we unlock the key to self-awareness and personal growth. And this is so true. So change starts with us. Things that can help is identify what needs to go. Let go of what needs to go. This might be in a journal. This might be in a video recording. This might just be you sitting down talking to your friend and going, I think I need to change this. I don't know why and I don't know how right now, but I recognize that there's a feeling here that's not sitting comfortably with me. And then understand why. Why is that not suiting you anymore? Again, we go back to the beliefs. Maybe it's I am not lucky in relationships. Okay, well, let's explore that. Why do you have that belief? Because it certainly isn't true. Because it's a belief, it's not a fact. We can actually then start to understand, well, actually, I believe this because this is how I've referenced it previously. Every relationship I've been in, this has happened. And then you can start to draw it down and feel the emotions of it. Whenever I'm doing coaching, I sit down and the first thing we do is we do a brain dump. What's on your mind? Let's go through what's happening for you right now, because feeling those emotions in every moment and observing them actually becomes an incredibly powerful change mechanism. And again, we go back to Ho'oponopono, forgive yourself for it. You're doing the best you can in this moment. So forgive yourself for these moments and focus on the present. Live in the right now. Conscious living becomes incredibly important with any relationship. Visualize the future. A visualization becomes, again, an incredibly powerful tool. When you look at your relationship, what do you envision it to be? What do you want it to be? And this might sit comfortably in the goal that we spoke about. Maybe part of your goal is to have a relationship that you just really want to be the best version of the relationship. It gives you all the feels, you're love focused, you're focusing on your love language, what that means for you and how you can be best nurtured within it. Or it might be actually, again, turning the lens back on yourself, how you want to behave within a relationship, how you want to show up. And take baby steps. Again, forgive yourself. Don't rush. There is no rush to this thing called life. We take it step by step and then reflect and reassess, because this becomes an incredibly important thing. When we look at self-reflection, you can then create more change, further change. And then with part of reflecting, assess, the couple of the questions that I want to leave you with is, what have you learned and how have you grown? We need to have a look at the processes that we go through within a relationship and actually monitor how far we have come. As snakes shed their skin and butterflies transform, we must shed old beliefs, toxic habits, and unhelpful relationships to progress. The goal is for you. Be a little bit self-centric here and say, what do I need in order to progress? And then when you bring that energy to your relationship will change and it will certainly flourish. It's a difficult process. All personal growth can be difficult. There is parts of it that's easy when you've gone through the healing process, but fundamentally, there is a little bit of resistance when we start to create change. So be okay with that. Be okay with being a bit uncomfortable. And releasing what doesn't align with our core values, we make room for new opportunities, of course, because nature hates a void, right? So coupled up with your beliefs, let's have a little look at values, because values become the compass by which we navigate the landscape of our life. Now, I want you to see values and beliefs and habits as hand in hand, the compass and also drivers that happen within ourselves. And true self-reflection and introspection happens when we start to look at our values and what makes us us. So when I talk about conscious living becomes when we talk about self-awareness, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, stress management, value alignment, and self-compassion, autonomy, goal achievement, and self-care. Living in the moment, actually living in what I refer to as the I. Now, these things can be affected quite simply with cultural background, family and upbringing, education, personal experiences, all of the things that make up who we are, everything that is completely engaged with us on a day-to-day level. Of course, we talk about media and society at large. This is who we should be. This is how we should behave. And this is how our relationship should be. When you live consciously, you live in alignment with yourself. And part of that, again, is going back to beliefs and values and habits. And some examples of values could be honesty, friendship, balance, self-expression. You might find that these values are the things that you hold incredibly strong and they are drivers. And what I want you to do and what I implore you to move forward with is start to recognize them. Start to observe, write them down, grab a diary, grab a video diary of yourself, and start to really explore what those values mean for you. And when we go to living in the I, this again is a fantastic tool to live consciously. A lot of the time we are driven by the extension of the world around us and even our partner, our romantic partner. And we forget to ask ourselves, how do I feel about this? What do I want to do about this? And don't judge your answer. You haven't got to share your answer, but don't judge it, because actually that's you talking to you and saying, well, actually, I want to action this. I want to do something about this. This isn't making me feel good. It may not be acceptable to everybody else that I need change. But when you start living in the I, you start looking at yourself, you start to then be able to create this version of yourself that shows up in your relationship and actually has a positive impact because you're standing true to yourself. There are things that you can do that can help you. Recognize the stream of chatter in your mind. Start listening to it. And does it actually relate to you? And does it relate to your relationship? There are times where I can unconsciously live and I'm walking around my house going, oh, I can't believe he's done this to me again. And I can't believe he's made me feel like this. And then the feelings come up. I've activated my sympathetic nervous system. I'm anxious, I'm sweaty, and I really just want to fight. But actually, what I've not done is I've not checked in with myself. I've gone back to old patterns, old feelings, old rhetoric that goes through my mind. So pause and observe. Have a look at yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, what's coming up for you in these moments, and acknowledge without judgment. You're not supposed to judge yourself. That's not what's important here. Just to observe. So when you observe, we don't judge children for not learning to walk correctly the first time they stand on their 2 feet. So don't judge yourself when you start to make that observation. So reconnecting with the I in the moment that the feelings come up. Let the feelings be the trigger, the thing that we anchor onto. And then we go, oh, I know this feeling. I'm not going to do anything about it, but I am just going to observe it. And then make a conscious choice. Make a more conscious choice about how you want to react in that moment. And I swear your partner will be very grateful for it in the end. Within a relationship, there's a point here that I really want to just touch on. Do you find avoiding pain often takes precedence over the pursuit of pleasure? Because when we listen to the chatter in our mind a lot of the time, what we will tend to do is listen to the strong part that pushes us towards the avoidance of pain. And it really is a very, very powerful motivator. And sometimes we will avoid changing our lives or changing decisions that we make or changing actions because we actually want to avoid the outcome of the decision that we've made because it's complex and because it might be painful. And then we shy away. Again, I'm not asking you to create action, just observation. If you're creating an avoidance of pain around a thought that's going through in your mind, that might be somewhere you need to do a little bit more of a deeper dive, because the human mind has a tendency to adhere to established patterns of thought. We always want to sit on the rails, the train rails, and go straight ahead because it can predict the outcome, which makes us safe. So again, use your feelings as your anchor. If you want to make change, you can do that through positive affirmations. And what I tend to do is polarize the negative thinking and create it into a positive affirmation. Simon isn't doing the things that I need him to do. Okay, so my affirmation for today is going to be Simon is always supporting me. And I'm just going to revert that to myself time and time again, if it feels right, because I'm going to use my feelings as my guidance. And if it does feel right, then I'm going to repeat it to myself. So I'm going to use that polarized point of view of the thoughts in my head